Okay, we are back live a few seconds early because I'm getting impatient. And with the Between the Pages book chat. And today we have fantasy author Ray O'Meara with us. And he's here to talk about his book, The Aberrationists. I hope I got that name right.
Yes.
And so I'm going to turn it over to him and let him introduce himself. Take it away.
So yeah, hi. This is my premiere novel. I've been writing on and off for years, but never really got around to finishing anything until the last few years. And I was very excited because this one took me a while. It's kind of sweeping and long, and I don't want to say epic because that might give the wrong impression that there's a lot of swordplay or anything like that. But it's a hefty tome, and I'm really happy with it. And I'm working on the second one now, but would love to inspire some people to pick this one up in the meantime.
Okay. Show everyone the cover because that cover is gorgeous.
Sure. Yeah, the cover's pretty cool. It's a little spooky.
Yeah, I mean, it's really.
It's got
I love the
Stranger
colors.
Things vibe with the font, I guess. But yeah, the colors.
Nice skull. Yes, never discount the skulls.
Anyway, yeah, I'm very happy.
I love the blue and the red on that. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's very striking. I was very happy.
The camera doesn't do it justice. Go look at it on the site.
Please do. Please
anyway,
do.
Okay, so give us an overview of the book, what it's about, the plot, stuff like that, all the good stuff.
So the book is superhero-esque. It's inspired by a lot of comics and other books that I've read over the years. It follows primarily a young man named Will Kendrick, who is, your everyman. He's from South Carolina. He's just living his life down there, and he just gets essentially abducted one day by this strange man that his parents seem to be somewhat familiar with, and brought into this world of, I guess for lack of a better term, superpowers. He coins the term aberrationists. All these people have this aberration, this ability to take on one superpower or another. So I know aberrationist is a mouthful, but it's handled tongue-in-cheek in the book, so don't worry. I realize that it's an odd word, but yeah, so Will comes into this life, and he is, as often happens, there's a prophecy that he's got to get something done, and the prophecy turns out to be a little bit tricky. He's put up against this man named Desmond Duquesne, who's like your classic horror villain almost, until Will meets him and he realizes maybe he's not that bad. Maybe I don't want to kill a man that I'm just being told I have to kill. A prophecy says I have to kill this person. That seems weird to me. So there are a series of conflicts there, not just physical conflicts, but conflicts within Will himself. I like to think it's how a normal, rational person would react if put into one of these fantasy scenarios that we read so much about, especially someone who's a little bit older than, say, a Harry Potter, who's very impressionable and is just going to go along and say, okay, Dumbledore, sure, I'll do whatever you tell me to do, or okay, Hagrid, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. This kid is in high school, and he's got a bunch of strangers who have these magical powers telling him, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And he goes along to a point, but he realizes there might be more to this prophecy and scenario than everyone's letting on. So there's a bunch of mystery in there too. It unravels slowly, but every character's got their own agenda. So I thought that was a fun thing to write.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on the chosen trope too. That the chosen one actually sympathizes with the villain a little bit.
Yeah, there are a few things there where I wanted to take the chosen trope and adjust it a little bit. First of all, this is happening in a world where the chosen trope exists. The characters are aware of this. It's the literature that we know exists, and they've read it, and so they can kind of wink at it or frown at it or whatever, But also, yeah, he's I wanted a villain in Duquesne who was of course, engaging and charismatic, because that's just how I like my villains. But then I realized, if you make him this way, there's the possibility that the average person would not mind being around him. He might not come off. I mean, this isn't like a mustache twirling, you know, holding the world ransom kind of villain. To the outside world, he's putting up a good front. And I think you've got to make your main character, your hero, fallible. And most of us would probably fall for this guy's front, that he's, you know, a really good guy. And it doesn't hurt that Will also falls for the guy's daughter. So when you're told that you've got to kill someone, but you've kind of gotten feelings for their daughter, that makes it a little bit harder too. So he's really, I like to craft conflicts that are not just easily, you know, a wave of a wand or anything like that. And then the bad guy's gone and everything's okay. Whatever Will does in this scenario, there will be consequences. So he's got to weigh them throughout the book.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about Will. What's his personality like?
Will kind of just wants to be himself and do his thing. He's tugged in a lot of different directions throughout the book. So by the end of the book, we see him coming into his own and really setting up some ground rules for who he's going to trust and who he's going to listen to. He's lost. He is at one time the hero of the story, but he doubles as the reader surrogate, I think, because he's just introduced to this world. So he's confused. And like I said, this is stuff that exists in, like, comic books exist in Will's world. He's living in our world right now in, you know, 2020-ish Northeast United States, going to places that you'll recognize, doing things that the average person does. And he loves his friends, he loves his family, but throughout the course of the book, I think he comes into some issues with trust. As like I said, a lot of characters have some hidden agendas, and so he starts to question himself and who he can trust. But in the end, he starts to embrace this gift that he's been given, and starts to really enjoy it, as I think most of us would if any of us found out we had a superpower. That was the other thing I wanted to do too, is make it like, you know, how a real person would behave if they suddenly tomorrow gained this superpower. They wouldn't go put a cape on probably and start fighting crime or anything like that. I mean, they do silly, petty stuff for kicks, you know, especially like a high school kid. So that's what he does. Not harmful in any way or anything, but he's coming into his own and just really learning a lot about himself.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the antagonist. What's he like?
Desmond is, he started out as being like this just black hat antagonist, right? But as I wrote him, he started to get much more complex. He's someone who, he's not a vampire or anything, but he's been around for a couple hundred years through means. He's an occultist, and he's just kind of obsessed with living forever. He's got like a Voldemort complex, like afraid of death, you know? And he'll do whatever he can to avoid death, to avoid dying. He's got this awful fear of it. But usually that means doing things that are pretty unsavory. And stabbing some people in the back and doing all these crazy rituals and stuff like that. But it's funny. He wears sometimes this plague doctor mask when he's being theatrical, but there's kind of a metaphor there, because the plague doctor used to, in the beak of his mask, the mask was shaped like that, they would have herbs and, you know, scents that when they were doing all of this really unsavory work, finding dead bodies all around the city, they wouldn't be smelling this awful stuff. They would have these herbs in their noses and stuff. So Duquesne, I think, is like that. He does things that convince himself that what he's doing is not that bad, that it's not that unsavory. He's got awards for all this humanitarian action that he's done and stuff. You know, he's like, all I want to do is not die. And so I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to do that. But to make up for, you know, sacrificing all these people or yada yada, I'll buy a library, or I'll, you know, donate to a medical school or something like that. So he's well known in his society. He's a philanthropist on the outside, but yeah, on the inside, he's a dark occultist who is going to do whatever he can to stay alive for as long as he can. He likes power, and he wants his family to be one of the most powerful in the world, by whatever means possible.
Well, sounds like he's a nicely layered villain. So
yeah, and he loves his family too. He just I wanted that. He's married. He's got children. He's not just some creep who's in an alley. He's you know, he's likable. He's my wife's favorite character in the book, which I didn't expect. But he's just like, he comes off being someone you want to be around because he's got interesting stories to tell and stuff. And I wanted that because I want there to be actual stakes at the end of the book when these two come to blows, so to speak. You know, I want you to care.
Okay, so what was the hardest scene or type of scene for you to write in the book?
The hardest scene, and I don't know exactly why, I might have to talk it out right now to see why. It's this warehouse scene. It's toward the end of the book. We're probably like 80% of the way into the book at this point, and it's happening right before the big climactic chapters at the end. And Will's being held hostage in this warehouse, and I think I put it off forever because I kept changing things, little things about the scene. I wasn't sure how I wanted it to end. I wasn't sure where the placement of characters and objects, and I think part of it was the excitement to get to what happened after that scene. I knew what was coming. It was going to be like the big climax. It was going to be a lot of fun to write. And I think there was an impatience to get to that. But then I think also this scene was like, I felt more like a director than a writer, because I had to imagine this brand new setting, this new set and place where everything was. There were physical aspects to the scene that I just kept changing in my head. And it really, for Will to escape properly, the window had to be here and this had to be there. And I had to keep running through it to make sure that as I was writing it, I was being consistent with where everything was and stuff. So it's a scene that I skipped and went back to because I just was like, I can't, I don't know. I have to get the stuff that I'm really excited about writing out of my head and just put it down on paper, and then I'll come back to this and maybe something will come to me. But I think, yeah, the scenes where things have to be so physically specific, where the setting has to be physically specific, can be a little bit tricky because there's that idea that you really have to be consistent with your descriptions.
Yeah, you do have to be consistent with your descriptions. Yeah. Sometimes the editors can catch you when you aren't consistent too. So.
Right, and especially like the interior of a building. You can't just say they were in a park or a cemetery or anything, and everyone knows what that looks like. And you can kind of use your imagination if you've got a building where the actual structure of the building plays a part in that scene. You've got to really know what you're talking about there.
Yeah, and if you slam someone face first against the wall, you can't have them being punched in the face in the next scene either. So.
Right, and there's always that reader that will be like, wait, I thought you said the exit door was on the right, and now he just went to the left. It's like, you've got to you've almost got to draw the setting out for yourself when it comes to that.
Yeah, actually, I've done that once or twice. Mm-hmm. Drawn the schematics and blocked that. It makes it easier. So what was your favorite scene to write in the book?
I think the favorite has to be the climax at the end. It takes place over 2 or 3 chapters. I can't remember. I'll say like 2.5 chapters or so. And it's just, I kind of just go all out. I saw this writing process for this book as kind of like creating a season of a television show. That's how I approached this story in many ways. And this was my big season finale, and this was a scene that was, it probably should have been trickier to write because I basically threw every character I had into this one physical space, and they went at it. It's just it's a really crazy scene with bizarre demons popping out of the floors and ceilings and stuff, and every character you've met along the way really dealing with it in their own certain way. And I just had tons of fun with it because I just we got to this part where I actually got to include some like monsters in the story. You know, the whole time it's been very reality based, as reality based as you can get for a fantasy story like this. But at the end, I got to let loose and design some fun, crazy, creepy monsters to throw at these characters. I got to give too many spoilers, get rid of a few characters that I think no one was too sorry to see go. And that felt good. So it was just fun to see this like kind of big set piece of a scene come together. And I'm all about the character interaction, and I just, there were really some fun moments in there where characters who had not really crossed paths at all during the book got to experience each other. And that's always fun for me to write, when characters first meet each other.
Yeah, sounds cool. So, do you have any quirky secondary characters that tend to steal the scenes?
I have like all quirky secondary characters. I always say that there's a lot of Dickens in this book, which is really not me being pompous. I'm not saying that this is anywhere near as good as Dickens is, because he's like my favorite. But yeah, I think that Quirk belongs to secondary characters as much as possible, because you don't have to stick with the secondary characters. You know, you can give them a quirk that is completely absurd, and no one minds if they're only in it for a few chapters. No one's like, oh, this is too much, you know? So if you want to have a fun quirk or something, one of my secondary characters plays with a yo-yo all the time. Just kind of, he's got like a nervous habit. He'll be playing cat's cradle with his yo-yo and stuff. I would never do that with my main character. I don't want to have to carry that through the entire book and remind myself, oh yeah, I guess he's probably playing with his yo-yo now.
Yeah,
so
that
I
would
do
be even worse if you had a series.
Yeah, so I do assign quirks mainly to my secondary characters, and yeah, there are a few that steal the show, I think. What's fun is that some of the quirks in my book can be these powers that people have. So the difference between this story and like the typical superhero comic or something where someone gets struck by lightning or, you know, wakes up one day with a superpower is that here people get to decide what they do with their abilities, with their magical abilities. So if you want to be invisible, you can be invisible. If you want to be, you know, if you want to read minds, you can read minds. But everyone gets one, pretty much. You know, you choose what you want to focus on, what your concentration is going to be. So some of the quirkier characters do quirkier things with their abilities. I have one character who kind of raises the dead, but not quite. She just kind of reanimates dead tissue. So she's almost like a zombie maker, you know? She's not going to bring anything truly back from the dead, but she brings a taxidermied bear back to some semblance of life at one point, or the skeleton of a small bird comes back and, you know, animates. So she was fun. She only lasts maybe 2 chapters in this book because too much of a good thing. But yeah, there's everyone who's read the book has had a different favorite secondary character, which I kind of love. You know, it's some people like the guy who reads minds. Some people can't stand him because they think he's really annoying, how he's always saying, you know, I know what you're thinking, and putting people on the spot. But yeah, I've got a bunch. There's a little girl named Rose who I didn't think would be anyone's favorite character, and my mother-in-law loves Rose, and she's just Rose is a girl who can't control her abilities, who when she sleeps, her nightmares come true. They come into reality. So she just doesn't sleep, basically, or she sleeps heavily sedated. It's it's like the dark side of these abilities when you can't control them. So yeah, again, not something I wanted to write a whole book around, but a fun secondary character to have.
Okay, so which one of your characters would you like to hang out with in real life?
It would be one of the bad guys, I think. I hate to say this. I don't know how many people answer this question with the villain, but I've always been attracted to the villains, and that's why there are multiple in this story. And I would say either Desmond Duquesne, for what I said before. He's got some fun stories. He's been around for a couple hundred years, and really, he doesn't kill you unless he has to. Or I might say Mr. Wisp, who's the mind reader. He's an awful person, but he's a lot of fun. He just kind of he's this amoral, you'd want to go to the casino with him or something and just, sit at a blackjack table with him all night while he reads people's minds across the table and tells you stories about what's going on in them. So, yeah, I'd say the bad guys probably.
Okay, so you write fantasy, of course. Are there any other genres that you would like to write in or have written in?
I have some horror short stories in the offing. They're getting ready to be sent out now. They're being fine-tuned. I like anything having to do with any sort of mythology, the darker side of mythology, usually. So that's what these have to do with, and that's also in the Aberrationists as well. If you look hard enough, you'll find some myth and fairy tale references scattered throughout in there. So yeah, mainly fantasy horror right now.
Okay, so do you have any upcoming projects?
Well, I'm working on the sequel to this book,
Well,
to the
that's
Aberrationists. So I'm really excited about it. I had another project I was working on, which is a murder mystery. Also tends to have some supernatural elements. So I was excited about that. But then when this got published and I got good feedback and people, quite a few of the reviews were saying, I hope there's a second one, I pushed the other project to the side, and it kind of lit a fire under me to get back into this and into these characters, and people, again, enjoying all of the different many characters. I'm excited to continue their story right now. So I'm a few chapters into that.
Well, that sounds great. When something to look forward to. So I think we'll wrap it up here, and I'll let you tell everyone where they can find you and your books.
Okay, great. You can find the book pretty much anywhere books are sold. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Apple. You can find it in bookstores, hopefully. If you don't find it in the bookstore, it should be easy enough for them to order. You can find me on Instagram at rayo824, or you can find my website, rayomira.com, and you can order the book. There are links to where you can order the book through that too. And there's also a bonus epilogue on the website, which serves as a link between this book and the next one. So definitely don't read the epilogue until you finish this book, because it will ruin several things for you probably. But please check that out. I'll be publishing a short story or two on there as well about some of those quirky side characters. So just some extra content. Oh, and I'm on Facebook too, Ray O'Meara author.
Okay, so thank you for being here. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Oh, and we got one last minute comment here. Would she like to?
Thank you, Erin.
Okay, so as I said, it was a pleasure chatting with you. And Between the Pages Book Chat, we'll be back tomorrow with another author, so join us then. And that's all for now, so bye.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.